Joe Boyke, are you here?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, I just wanted to acknowledge Joe as the new Republican member of the Register of Voters in Arlington, just appointed last week. Congratulations for the effort of the Arlington Town Committee for helping it happen. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize my colleague from the Republican State Committee from Woburn, Helen Hatch. And while I'm doing housekeeping, Paul Caruccio, who ran for Governor's Council. Who I'm sure would like to be on that council right now, especially with some of the interesting activities and little pressure they're putting on the governor right now. It would certainly be great if you had been part of that election and change that will hopefully occur this next 2 years anyway, for all those current members. Also acknowledging, I want to thank all of the members of the committee, of the Medford Republican Committee, who helped put this on today. But I do especially want to recognize not only Matthew Avella and his daughter, but Mark Crowley, our treasurer, David and Ursula Goodine, my wife Peggy, Susan Lance, especially for all of your work in making it happen this morning. As you may be aware, we are filming this event so that we can share it with our neighbors in the city and let them know that the Medford Republican Committee is a community organization, and we do recognize our past presidents. President's Day next Monday, an official holiday. We're here to recognize all of those gentlemen who have served that office. But of course, we are recalling at least a couple of them because we think they've contributed an awful lot to the service that they rendered when they were in office. That being said, I do want to also thank the crew from Ashiana Productions, which includes Robert Matusik over in that camera and Sal Khan over here on this camera. Thank you very much for all of your efforts. And if you do want to hear another interesting speaker, if you're hungry for the words and thoughts and insights of others, I'm sure most of us here know who Mark Stein is. You hear about him with several of our conservative radio talk show hosts and also on TV. He will be speaking at Ava Torah congregation in Stoughton. He will be on Thursday, February 24th. His subject matter will be Relighting the Lamps of Liberty, which is standing up for freedom in a darkening world. It costs us $10 per person. And anybody that knows Rabbi John knows that he puts on a good event, and certainly an insightful speaker. That being said, I thought I'd offer one little thought talking about one of our presidents by recalling words that were given back a few years ago. You cannot help the poor by destroying the rich. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift. You cannot lift the wage earner by pulling up the wage payer down. You cannot further the brotherhood of man by inciting class hatred. You cannot build character and courage by taking away people's initiative and independence. You cannot help people permanently by doing for them what they could and should do for themselves. That great president was Abraham Lincoln. We also, of course, are here to recognize the 100th birthday of President Reagan, who also, in our minds, has also created great service during his presidency. But before we get to that thought, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. A woman who I thought I'd be introducing as an office holder. I remember 5 minutes of the hour on that particular Tuesday night making the comment that we were going to have 2 women leaders, elected Republicans. Didn't happen. But there was no classier act than Mary Connaughton. I loved her from the first moment I met her when she came to our meeting a long time ago. And I know that in every occasion where I was at another committee meeting or another event in which Mary was a speaker, she won their hearts and minds too. Hopefully she can do that again this morning.
Well, it certainly is a pleasure to be back here, and I do want to thank all of you for all the help that you did, not only for my candidacy, but to support so many people running for office in last November. You guys did a great job. I know so many of you I got to meet along the campaign trail, and it was really great. And I think we have great opportunities before us. But right now, you know, it's the time to really think back on President's Day and what it means. And I just want to start actually with a confession, if that's okay. The year was 1980. I was a sophomore at UMass, and that was a presidential year. And I was the dorm representative for Ted Kennedy in his run for Democrat primary. Well, he didn't actually do so well in the primaries. It was interesting, after he backed out of the race, my mother, my uncle, my grandfather, and several members of my family at a family function pulled me aside, and they sat me down in the living room. And they began to talk to me about Ronald Reagan and what he stood for and his principles. And it wasn't until years later that I realized I was in the midst of an intervention there. And it worked, because that was the first year I was eligible to run to vote in a presidential election, and I voted for Ronald Reagan and haven't looked back. Well, there was nothing little about Ronald Reagan. When he was born, he was very large. In fact, his father, Jack, called him the fat little Dutch boy, Dutchman. And that name Dutchman stayed with him for years. He was big in so many, many ways, larger than life. And as we celebrate his 100th year birthday, it's good to look back and see who that man was. And I just want to share a couple of thoughts on him. He was born in Illinois. His father, it was a humble beginning. His father was a store clerk. His mother worked out of the house. It was difficult. His family went from town to town to town. And ultimately, he wound up, he was a high schooler in Dixon, Illinois. And, you know, his mother was Catholic, his father was Catholic, but he wasn't raised a Catholic. And, you know, he was a little bit of a ruffian. He got himself into a little bit of trouble every now and then. And one day at a schoolyard, his father walked by, and he was in the midst of battling all these schoolboys. And his father came in, and he yelled at the boys, including his son, and he booted his son, gave him a big boot. And he said, you know, I didn't boot you because you were fighting. I booted you because you weren't winning. And Ronald took that to heart. He said, he got a real strong sense of what's right and what justice is all about. And he said in his memoir, he recalled, but I was winning. I didn't deserve that boot. He stood up by his principles for a long time. Now, he was very athletic. He played football in high school. He was also a lifeguard for 6 years along the Rock River in Illinois. And he was credited with saving 77 lives at the time. 77 lives. What a guy. But he never considered himself a hero. But certainly at a very young age, all those people around him considered him a hero, and that's what he was. He was a great man. He was very well-rounded. He joined the drama club and really took a shine to that, and that's what helped propel his career, ultimately for him to be able to become president. And we all know the story, but I think I'll repeat this. We might not all know all the details. But one of Reagan's great heroes was Newt Rockne, the coach for the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame football team. And the story was that Ronald Reagan really wanted to play the role of George Gipp. And George Gipp was on the football team under Newt Rockne, and he fell ill. He got seriously ill and he was going to die. And during a game against Army, at halftime, Notre Dame wasn't doing so well. It was tied at 0. And at that time, Newt Rockne gave the speech that actually wound up giving the name to Ronald Reagan. This is the basic speech that he gave that Ronald got to say in the movie. "This is it, Rock. It's all right. I'm not afraid. But sometimes, Rock, when the team is up against it, when things are wrong and the breaks are beating the boys, ask them to go out and win one for the old Gipper. I don't know where I'll be then, Rock, but I know I'll be happy."